Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy, invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy, building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 2. Welcome to our next episode of Mighty Married Moms. Today we are really excited to be able to introduce you to our own colleague, Wendy Williams. So, Wendy, please tell us a little bit about your background and what you have to offer our viewers and listeners.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, I am actually a marriage educator, which is very different from a marriage counselor or a marriage therapist. And I can tell you a little bit more about that. But the reason I'm doing this is because I absolutely love my husband. He is the bomb, as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of people around this very table would tell you the same thing. He's a very good man.
He's a good guy.
Good people. And the reason that we have such a great and strong relationship is early in our marriage, actually, we went to a couple of weekends that were not geared toward people that were falling apart, but rather educational weekends that helped kind of expand our repertoire on communication, expand our repertoire on the differences between men and women and what we bring to the table. And that set such a really solid foundation that I've never, ever forgotten it. And one of the things I went to school a long time ago and graduated a long time ago and became a registered nurse. And I spent many years working with people who had pretty significant health conditions. I spent a lot of time working with cancer patients, HIV and AIDS related diseases, and I spent some time in hospice nursing too. So I'm not afraid of emotion. I'm not afraid of tough conversations, and because when you're at the end of your life, there's some tough conversations to be had. So early in my marriage to my husband, like I said, we went on a couple of these weekends, and one of the things that came through on one weekend in particular was that marriages, very much like individuals, go through stages. So we're all moms. We know that there's the infancy, there's the toddler, there's the school age, there's the adolescence, and so forth. Well, relationships also travel through very predictable stages. And we're all familiar with the honeymoon stage. Everybody knows that one. And then I think people say it's the honeymoon stage, and then there's the divorce stage. I mean, there doesn't seem to be anything in between. But actually, there are things that are in between. And when I heard this particular piece of information, my jaw dropped, and I was like, does everybody else know this, and I'm the only one that doesn't know it? And that was that, again, there are some stages, depending on who you read, 6, 7 stages, depending. But a very predictable one is the third stage, which is called the power struggle. And it's critically important that each relationship actually go through a power struggle. The honeymoon stage is dewy-eyed, and you're the best thing since sliced bread, and isn't he great? He's the strong, silent type. He's just so strong, and he doesn't need his words to communicate. He's wonderful. But in the third stage, in that power struggle, will you talk to me? Would you please speak? Gosh, you're driving me crazy because you don't talk. I don't know what you're thinking. All of a sudden, what was attractive becomes repellent. But it's part of the process. It's part of the process of really creating and cementing a foundation. But when you're in this power struggle and it feels like, who are you? And why don't you talk? And you're driving me crazy and you're making me mental and all that stuff. It feels like this is a mismatch. I made a mistake. When in actuality, all that stuff is meant to be there and it has a purpose for really kind of going back, because you come together and you're like glued, and then you find a way to be back in an individualized place and mutually supporting one another. So that's
what's on the other end of that power struggle.
And it's supposed to be there.
Okay.
And what clicked for me with the teacher at the time, kind of, or maybe I don't know, somebody likened it to the fact that adolescents go through the same thing. Oh my gosh, these pit bulls, or my voice is changing, it's driving me crazy. There are some people who think that the statistics are that 50% of all marriages end in divorce in the United States. That I can argue a little bit about that statistic. It's actually a little bit too high. That aside, doesn't matter. However many relationships end in divorce, a lot of times it's in this power struggle stage where people feel they're mismatched.
That was the stage that was most
People feel they're mismatched. People feel like they're arguing and there's just too much agita going on. It's just really frustrating. So therefore, it's not the right thing, when in actuality it is the right thing. Imagine if 50% of all of our teenagers said, these pimples are just too much. I'm done. I'm going out in the garage and taking care of things. Right?
That would be a bad thing.
And end of their lives.
It
would be a public health crisis.
Yes, yes.
Because it's perfectly normal and natural to go through this difficult stage of adolescence and trying to fit in your own body and your own mental, like this. And do I like my mother? I used to sit on her lap, but now I can't imagine. And, I stink. I don't even like the way I smell. Never mind. Whatever. It's uncomfortable to be an adolescent in our culture. But if, like I said, if a percentage of those people took their lives because it was so uncomfortable, it would be devastating.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens with marriages. Where they're being aborted, ended, blown up for not very good reasons, for false reasons, because that power struggle is important.
So, Wendy, let me push back a little bit on you here. If let's say a couple is going through that power struggle stage, and they're committed, they want to work, they want to get to the other side. How do they do that? What do they need to do in order to really figure out those differences in order to come back together again?
Well, let me give you an illustration. If I were to say to you, the views from the top of Mount Kilimanjaro are absolutely gorgeous, and you're going to love what you see at the top. But let's face it, we're at the bottom, so we're going to have to get to the top, and we're not going to take an elevator. We're not going to take a helicopter. We're going to climb. If you showed up in flip-flops and a bikini and your sunscreen, I'd be like, you're a bit ill-prepared to get to the top. And you're going to have a lot more bloody knees, and you might not even make it because you're not equipped.
Right.
But if I said to you, we're going to see the views from Mount Kilimanjaro, and you had the right boots, you had the layers of clothes, you had the backpack that was just the right weight, and we did some exercises beforehand to get you ready, and you only went as far as you could go on day one. You didn't try to stretch. If I equipped you, if you were equipped to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, you could do it, and you could see the views from the top. What often happens is when we're in marriages and we're in that power struggle, we're ill-equipped.
So what does it take to be equipped?
Sure. It's called marriage education.
Okay.
It's very, very simple. And it's not about therapy, and it's not about counseling, because, again, an analogy that I really like to use is that, when we go to yoga classes, everybody can go to a yoga class. But if I have a back problem and I can't do certain poses because it will really aggravate my L5, problem, then I'm going to get an excuse to not do that particular exercise, and I'm going to go to my orthopedic surgeon and say, we need to talk about my L5 problem, and so how much of the yoga can I do? So I'm going to talk one-on-one, I'm going to get counseling, I'm going to get therapy about my particular back issue, but in general, I can go along with all the other people in the yoga class and learn some really good moves on how to strengthen my core. So marriage education is really about strengthening the core of your marriage. And it's just general good marriage hygiene, general good relationship skills that are not rocket science and are not unbelievably difficult, but they equip you. They equip you. And most of us kind of just go, I'm in love, this is the best person since sliced bread, and that's the end of the time they pay attention to their relationship. It's supposed to come naturally. We've watched too many movies. Okay? It's supposed to all come naturally. It's not hard work, but it is equipping. You got to go find the boots. Right. You got to put them on. You got to figure out, so all that kind of stuff. So it's a different approach than we really, like you said, a couple that you were imagining really struggling and having a difficult time. If they go to marriage education class and go, oh, we're in the third stage. Oh, we're supposed to be tussling? Oh, well, here's some good ways of managing it. Here's some good ways of pulling myself out from that dogfight and pulling back and gaining some management or some course correction on how I'm responding or reacting in this particular case. And women, there's a lot to learn about gender differences. Right. It's just a lot of really solid, good information out there about, again, general principles on how to relate to your marriage partner.
So can I ask you, I know you said part of the reason that you want to get marriage education is that you adore your husband. We adore our husbands too, but it didn't necessarily lead us in that direction. Is there anything else, in your life that you feel like, oh, here's some things that really made me decide that this was the direction I want to take? I mean, we've gone from nursing, which is all related, right? All related to all the experiences that you were.
Yeah, I think that if I could rewind and do college and my thought process around education differently, I think that my personality and my propensity is for wellness and for taking, people who are in a pretty good place, they're not falling off the edge of the earth for any physical, emotional, mental reason, and going from good to great. That seems to be something that's really important to me. So that if I could rewind things, I don't know that I would go into nursing in a clinical, hospital-based, sickness model. I think that I might have gone into public health nursing and said, this is what really works for populations, population health. If you really want to do well in the world, let's turn down the volume on the tobacco advertisements and turn up the volume on exercise advertisements, right? So I would try to make incremental changes to populations. And so this is kind of feels like an extension of that self-awareness, is that I realize that I'm very interested in wellness and how to go, like I say, from good to great and take what's already such wonderful things in place rather than trying to patch together brokenness. So I think that that's kind of added to it.
And I mean, it makes sense to me as a health coach, right? I mean, I think of health that way too, right? You're equipping yourself with all the right things for preventative medicine, right? So you want to prevent the chronic illness, you want to prevent getting, a horrible disease, and the best way to do that is to practice good health habits and good healthy eating. And so it sounds to me like that's what you're saying about marriage. If you know what the skills are, you can equip yourself with the right stuff. Maybe when you get to that stage 3 conflict, that you'll understand it and you'll go through it in a very different way than you would if you weren't equipped with that information.
Right. Another thing that strikes me is that I think that a group of women, for instance, 3 women having a cup of coffee or a sandwich together, it might be very easy to say, my kid is driving me crazy. What did you do, Linda, when your kids were 13 years old? The boys are driving me nuts. It's very easy. I don't know how much, at least in my experience and the stuff that I'm reading, I don't think people come out with going, you might complain about your husband, but you won't say, I'm really thinking about leaving, or I'm thinking. We're not as prone to kind of showing our that things are a struggle and I'm wondering if I could do better. It's
I don't know. I've seen some women who a little TMI on their Facebook pages.
Oh yeah,
that's a bad
other
thing. My stupid husband does this. My stupid husband did that. And,
right. Well, I would say that's somebody that's not really self-aware that they're half the piece. Part of the puzzle.
There's that.
Right? Right. So there's a lot of people who point fingers and say, if my husband would be better in these 17 areas, then our lives would be better. Sure, I can see that. But in terms of people strive to be better moms, I don't know that they sit around and strive to be better wives.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think in general it's not something that we think about.
Right.
Because particularly once you have kids in the house, you're so focused on raising the kids. You're also focused on your job, and oh my gosh, if I have time, I'll go exercise. Maybe I won't eat right because I don't have time. I feel like I don't have time, and that's another whole issue, right? But you're right. I don't think people think too often about how do I be a better wife or how do I be a better husband.
Yes, or how do we improve this core relationship that was there before children, is there during children, and
God willing, is there afterward.
Is there after the children, exactly. And we've talked before about people who are so focused on their kids that when the last kid leaves for college, they have a really difficult conversation saying, this isn't working anymore. I haven't been happy with just you for years, and so let's just figure out a way. Whereas if they've been doing some care and feeding and some hygiene and some equipping along the way, that relationship, that core relationship, again, none of us walk down the aisle saying, gee, can't wait to have this fall apart at the seams. Gee, looking forward to that day when I contemplate divorce. Nobody does that.
I think a lot of people start to get jaded about it after a while.
They do.
Particularly people who, for a variety of very good reasons, have multiple divorces.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
right. That definitely can happen.
Yeah,
and we've talked a little bit before in other segments about the outcome of on kids of coming from a broken home.
Right.
The statistics are all out there. More drug use. Potential pregnancies, all these different things, or sexually transmitted diseases, all these different things have gain more of a solid footing in homes where mom and dad are rocky.
Yeah.
Or so there's just a lot there, and it just feels like the right match for me.
If there is no way to come to some agreement, perhaps it is better sometimes for the kids to have the parents separate.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Obviously, abuse or things like that.
Right.
There are certainly ways, but that's like saying, well, I might as well just give in and have and not get chemo.
So your point
for my cancer.
Your point is basically, don't just assume that you need to throw in the towel,
right?
Because you're having issues.
Correct.
I think that's the basic point that you're trying to get across.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. That there are a multitude of ways of looking at relationships and looking at the differences between how we communicate with one another. There's cultural differences, which everybody's kind of used to, but still there's some things to be learned there. Mm-hmm. One of the things I challenge people with is if you're think about the last 15 Google searches that you did, or 15 YouTubes that you looked at. How many of them were concerned with how do I be a better parent, and how many of them are concerned with how do I contribute and feed and water this relationship? Mm-hmm. Or how do I ask for what I need in the relationship? I'm not very good at asking my spouse for X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. So how much time do we spend on that? Because we think it comes naturally and easily. And so that's just kind of my take, is that there's a lot to be gained and a lot to be learned from having the thing that we talk about in Mighty Married Moms, having the life that we've always wanted,
right?
And not the ones that we're necessarily sitting in and feeling kind of
don't want to fall into a life. You want to
be intentional,
and be willing to work at it, because
Correct.
all relationships, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your boss, whether it's with your siblings or your parents, all relationships take some effort.
Yes,
absolutely.
And we can't just assume that the fairy tale is going to go on forever just because we had a few moments of love and adoration early on.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we also it's the lower priority, right?
Yeah.
Because it has to be in a lot of ways, or feels like it has to be. Your priority is putting food on the table, taking care of the kids, taking care of all their needs. So maybe it's a lower priority. But I wanted to ask you too, do you think in your research the modern day couple goes through those transitions differently than, say, our parents did? And my parents, when I grew up, my mom was she made all the decisions in the household. My father didn't really make any decisions in the household, and they sort of accepted their very different roles. They had very clear distinction between you do this and you do that, and that was easy to understand and easy to I shouldn't say easy. That's wrong, and I don't feel that way. But it was just very clear.
Yeah.
I think nowadays it's not as clear, because we've got two working parents. We've got women are now wanting to be successful at their career and at home and all this, and men are too. Men are wanting to participate more in the household. They don't want the women to make all the decisions. They want to be part of it too. So I think we're very different couples than we used to be. So I'm wondering if going through those stages is different now too. We're sort of
I don't know about going through the stages as being so different as much as the like you alluded to, the ambiguity of who we are and our roles are not as clear. And I would say that you've heard the expression sandwich generation, which is we've got the little kids over there and we've got the parents over there, and everybody needs to be. I think that we're a sandwich generation, or a sandwich I don't even know, multi-generation of people who are in transition from those very predetermined gender roles, and it's very very unclear. It's very very unclear. So we're very much pioneering.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, we're beating back the bushes and trying to see is there is there water over there? Is it I don't know if you remember the movie. Oh gosh, it's with Humphrey Bogart. Anyway, but he
Oh, the queen.
the African queen.
yeah.
When you have a bird's eye view, and they're very close to being in open water, but they feel like they're stuck in the jungle. And there's grass and outgrowth all around them, and they don't really see. But we see. Just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Just keep pushing. So I think that there's that. I think that we're definitely in a place where, and I think that as a woman, I know that there are things that come. That I enjoy about being a woman, enjoy about being myself, but it's hard for me to cop to it because I grew up in a feminist world. Do you know what I mean? I kind of like certain things about male and female differences that are very what might be traditional, but it's hard for me to even say them. I don't even want to say them right now, because it feels disingenuous and it feels like I'm slaying my sisters, the sisterhood, and it is a very interesting time. So yes, it is different, but I don't know that marching through honeymoon stage and then settling in phase, which I don't, it's not quite right, and then the power struggle and so forth, and the ones that come after it are necessarily different from generations prior, but certainly how we come to it and our own predisposed notions about life are different. I totally agree with you.
Great.
So we are
out of time.
Out of time.
Yeah, Wendy, tell us one more time where people can find you.
Sure. Well, you can get a link on www.marriedmoms.com.
Not quite.
No.
MightyMarriedMoms.com.
MightyMarriedMoms.com.
I'm not so corrected.
That's right. And then my own area on the web is connect again, CONNECT again.org. So it's connectagain.org because disconnection doesn't have to be the way that you live. You can connect again.
All right, that's great. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Wendy. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.